True vitality springs from within, blossoming with every step taken. Like flowers that bloom from the mere touch of water, we find strength in the simplest of forces, our own resilience. No matter how unfamiliar the ground or uncertain the path, we carry within us all we need to thrive. In the currents of life, we bloom not because of where we are, but because of who we are, flourishing even in the most unexpected places. This is the excerpt that's in small text at the bottom of the album cover. It's interesting because, on first impression, I feel like it runs a little counter to what we actually see and hear from, of course, Irene's first standard solo debut, Like a Flower. In the music video, we see Irene hunting down a man named Damon. His name spelled backwards is of course the word nomad, in which we see Irene performing inside and outside of the Nomad Hotel. Damon has somehow come across an orange cassette tape named See the Sun, which belongs to Irene and is the primary reason why she is tracking him down. It isn't clear how Damon got this tape or if Damon is actually a real person in this story. Several moments throughout the music video allude to the idea that Irene is Damon in some capacity or is wanting to hunt him down in an effort to become him or assume his identity. This is the main part of the narrative of the video. Irene seems to be running some operation where she secretly records people around her onto cassette tapes and titles them based on the ideas and human experiences they represent. For example, Irene records an interaction between two people in a relationship and titles it Flower in Love. It is the people around Irene that are the flowers she studies, but Irene herself does not appear to be one. The importance of simile in the song's narrative. Irene is growing like a flower, but she is not one to begin with. She studies the behavior of the people around her in order to learn how to grow in similar ways to them, and so, is Irene not a human in the story? Given her ability to scale walls and suspend herself on the ceiling when she's hunting Damon down, I don't think it's entirely unreasonable to guess that Irene is some kind of supernatural entity in this story. The orange tape titled See the Sun is special. It's the only one in Irene's cassette tape collection that stands out as unique, but why? I think that's because the events of this tape involve Irene herself in this story. For as much as we know, the contents of the See the Sun tape catalog the events of Irene hunting Damon down. The process of what Irene does to get this tape back is what ultimately becomes the contents of the tape itself. So what is the lesson from this tape, the outcome of this music video? I have two main speculations about the context of this story. One, Irene is some kind of gardener, and the people she studies are the flowers in her own garden that she tends to. Irene is not a flower in this case, but comes to identify with their life cycle in a lot of ways. The resilience a flower has to grow in even the most dire situations. Maybe Irene considers that even without her presence in the garden, these flowers would still naturally find a way to survive anyways. Flowers don't intrinsically rely on the input of the gardener. They inherently know how to survive without humans. The album cover's sentiment begins to ring true in this regard. Both humans and flowers find resilience in even the most dire situations. Damon is a flower like all the others, and given his tape is titled See the Sun, I would guess that it's an allegory for how to grow like a flower. Irene, as the gardener, sees herself in the flower that is Damon. They become one and the same by principle, and all it takes is Irene physically finding Damon to conclude the events of the See the Sun tape. In this case, Irene is both the flower and the sun. She is her own vitality and becomes what she needs in order to continue growing. Both flowers and humans are naturally equipped with the will to survive. It seems like the nature of all living things is what allows Irene to push through difficult times in her life, to recognize that she's going to be alright in the end because she knows how to pull through. That is my main guess. I think that is the most obvious conclusion we can come to about this story. Irene is some kind of gardener who learns from the life cycle of flowers that all living things possess an inherent courage to keep going. That knowledge is what allows Irene to trust and believe in herself. However, my second idea about this narrative, I think it's interesting to look at this story from the perspective of Irene being a vampire. Walk with me here. Irene is an unliving vampire who studies humans in order to emulate their behaviors and mannerisms. Why does she do this? Irene identifies that in order to thrive as a vampire, she needs to be able to coexist with humans to get close to them to be able to harvest their blood. Irene hunting down Damon and wanting to become him in some capacity would make sense in this context. By stealing his life essence, she does siphon a part of his being in order to sustain herself, her own vitality. Irene the vampire grows like a flower in time. In a similar way that flowers grow in the direction of the sun, vampires naturally learn to grow in the direction of human society and behaviors. Even in death, the indomitable will to survive causes Irene to thrive in the most unexpected places. Life continues to find a way, even in death sometimes, is the lesson to pull from this story. This would also explain the Samordinalap that is Damon's name, reading as nomad when spelled backwards. Part of Irene's will to thrive is being acutely aware of the attitudes of people around her, knowing when and where to leave before things get too suspicious. Again, referring to the album cover excerpt, we bloom not because of where we are, but because of who we are. Those are my two ideas about the narrative of Like a Flower. It's either Irene is a gardener who pulls inspirations from the flowers that grow in her garden, or She's a vampire who learns to emulate human nature in order to survive. In any case, this is a song about discovering the courage to keep going, finding hope and resilience in the most unexpected places, and learning to trust in your ability to keep going always. As far as my thoughts on the album itself, Like a Flower, the song is all about rhythm and romance. It musically feels like you're passing the threshold into something that you've been longing for. The swell of instrumentation towards the end of the song, spurred by Irene's layered delivery of the line "finally." In the music video, this is also the moment Irene finds Damon. As Irene herself describes the narrative of this song to be about finding courage, all aspects of this song work to meet that definition in full. The song itself is great, the instrumental working overtime to add enough dynamic to a chorus with otherwise very simple melodies, but it's Irene herself who adds an incredible charisma to the song that makes it uniquely hers. The rest of the album adds to the narrative presented in Like a Flower. Summer Rain paints the picture of the album cover itself with lines such as, "Like the eye of a hurricane, a daisy caught in the summer rain." But the star of the show for me personally is Strawberry Silhouette. It's an unexpected departure from the airy dreamscape of the rest of the album, presenting a more brooding and industrial instrumental to lure the subject in who has become trapped within Irene's strawberry silhouette. It also adds fuel to my speculation about this album being vampire themed, the red imagery of the strawberry luring the subject in, Irene's appetite being quote razor sharp, taking a bite. I'm getting very strong vampire vibes from this album. And then songs like Startline and Winter Wish bring us back to the light tempo of the album, veering off into more retro nostalgic soundscapes. Startline in particular sounds like a track you'd hear at the end of a late 2000s rom-com, inspiring a sense of hope for the future that is fueled by the memories of all that has happened before. By the time I got to the two special tracks at the end of this album and really spent some time with them, I started to realize how well this album would have fared as a standard Red Velvet release. The song I Feel Pretty's orchestral sections more than anything kind of clued me into this idea. Similar to Nyan's debut album, I think Irene serves a similar role in embodying what makes Red Velvet so recognizable. As the center of this group, her ability to anchor the concept of Red Velvet releases naturally means that she's going to take most of Red Velvet's style along with her as she debuts solo. The sound, imagery, and performance are very reminiscent of Red Velvet. Like a Flower's narrative reference to seeing the sun almost directly continues the story of Cosmic. I'm sure some people may point this out in criticism of the project, but I don't know, it makes sense to me in time. Irene is the center of this group, and the style of this group's concept translates over to her solo work for the same reason. I think it really works. Overall, it is a K-pop album with style and substance, and the album presents a cohesive narrative. Red Velvet continues to make it look incredibly easy to them. Irene's charisma is the real star of the show throughout this entire project. Like a Flower, the song is really only something that an idol 10 years into their career could make or pull off. It feels uniquely Irene with significant reference to the style of Red Velvet. Judging by the general history of groups at SM Entertainment, I think we're now in the stage of Red Velvet's career where solo works will take more of a priority, and group projects will be shifting into full bodies of work from this point out. At least, I kind of hope. I think that'll be a formula that works really well for Red Velvet. I hope we get to see more solo projects from them going forward. But yeah, these are my thoughts on the Like a Flower album. Thank you for watching this. If you did, let me know what you think about this project's narrative, the concept of the album, or the songs themselves, and so on. Yeah, thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.